Apple's iPhone 15 Pro and Ultra are about to get the biggest advantage that they've had in years compared to their Android competitors. And this is crazy because we just got a report saying that Apple is likely to be the only major device maker with 3nm chips in 2023, as Qualcomm is reportedly caught in a dilemma. So in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what that means, what the dilemma is, and why Apple is going to be in such a good position this year. Now, the dilemma from Qualcomm and MediaTek is that they are unclear on whether the newer process is worth it. And that's a new report from Digitimes saying that they have not made a clear decision just yet to join the 3nm camp this year, despite both hoping to keep up with Apple's process upgrade for their flagship mobile SoCs. And if none of this makes sense to you and you don't know why Qualcomm and MediaTek wouldn't go after Apple as fast as possible, well, there are some downsides in the tech industry right now. For example, shipments of smartphones within China fell 34.1% year over year in November. That is a huge drop. So basically less smartphone sales. And of course, each of those smartphones, especially the Android ones, come with MediaTek and Qualcomm chips. And it's not only the smartphone industry, it's the entire tech industry. Because if you look at PC sales, specifically desktop GPU sales, we just hit a 20-year low. Yes, for the past 20 years, we have not had sales this bad for desktop GPUs. And Sony just said that their PlayStation 5 shortage is finally over, and that's because tech demand is going down right now, even for consoles. And the last quarter before that, in the summer, they said that their gaming profits fell 49% due to rising costs, which is unfortunate. And part of that reason is because Americans' personal savings rate, the share of disposable income left over after spending, has hit the lowest level since 2005. So people have less extra money to spend on tech and everything else that they don't necessarily need. And by far the worst news that we just got is that Samsung's profits have plummeted 69% year over year on falling demand for processors. 69%. That is a massive drop from last year, and this is of course impacting everybody in the chip making business: Samsung, Qualcomm, MediaTek, everyone. So my thought after hearing that news was, what's gonna happen with Apple at this last quarter? Is that why we didn't get a new Mac for the first time in 20 years? Is that why we got the M2 iPad Pro, which is a disappointing update? Maybe Apple is also getting hit, but let's get into why Apple actually has the biggest advantage starting later this year with the iPhone 15 Pro. We just got a leak from Shrimp Apple Pro saying that the A17 Bionic chip that we're expecting in the iPhone 15 Pro and Ultra is going to be based on TSMC's 3nm process. Yes, 3nm, and this is not the first time we've been hearing this, because way back in September, we actually got a report from Nikkei Asia saying that the A17 chip for the iPhone 15 Pro will use TSMC's second generation 3nm process. And guess what just happened a week ago? Apple supplier TSMC has officially started mass production on 3nm chips, and those are most likely going into Apple's products, maybe even their Macs, but for sure the iPhone 15 Pro and Ultra models. And this is where we go back to this article saying that Apple is likely going to be the only major device maker with 3nm chips this year, as Qualcomm is caught in a dilemma. So let's get into why Qualcomm specifically is in their dilemma. They just had their earnings back in November saying that their revenue forecast falls short as smartphone sales slump and their shares of their stock slided. And that's of course the same thing we saw with smartphone sales going down in China. And going even further, Qualcomm literally warned of weak smartphone sales, saying that there was a rapid deterioration in demand for semiconductors or chips. And then moving over to MediaTek, they also did the same thing back in July, cutting their revenue forecasts, expecting demand for chips to dip down. And then another US-based semiconductor manufacturer spun off from AMD, Global Foundries, planned up to 800 layoffs, and that was announced back in December. So they are suffering as well. And it's not only them, because there's already a huge list of tech layoffs that have been announced in just the first few days of January, as you can see right here. The tech industry is not going well right now. And here is where we finally get into the major dilemma. Digitimes said that TSMC's 3nm wafer price breaks $20,000 per wafer, and that of course means that we should be expecting price increases for the iPhone 15. Now, if you look at this chart, you can see that the 5nm wafers were priced at around $16,000. So that means a 25% increase in cost for the 3nm chips compared to 5nm. So that basically explains the dilemma for Qualcomm and MediaTek, because if they are making chips that are going into Android phones, and those Android phones are going down in terms of demand and sales, then why would they decide to go up to 3nm, which is even more expensive, 25% more expensive, while sales are actually slumping and going down? It does not make sense, and that's why they're saying it might not be worth it. But thankfully for Apple, their iPhone sales demand has been keeping up quite well, and they actually have a ton of cash reserves to weather the storm. Even if they have to have smaller or lower profit margins, they can get a massive advantage this year with the iPhone 15 Pro's A17 chip being on 3nm, while everybody else is behind and waiting until everything kicks back up before following in Apple's footsteps. And here's where we get into the first major advantage. It was reported that Apple's A17 Bionic chip could be 35% more energy efficient, enabling longer battery life. That is literally a gain that's going to be happening from the newer 3nm chip process technology, which is going to be a huge boost, and only Apple is going to be getting it this year, because everybody else is not going to be switching to 3nm just yet. And the crazy thing about all of that is that the iPhone 14 Pro Max with the A16 chip still on 4nm, which is basically retuned 5nm, rebranded, it's already beating other flagship phones like the Pixel 7 Pro and the Fold 4 in terms of speed tests. As you can see, it finished in 2 minutes and 45 seconds compared to 2:53 for the Fold 4 and 3:10 for the Pixel 7 Pro, and these are the flagship new chips. And on top of that, in terms of the actual battery life, the iPhone 14 Pro Max is already beating the S22 Ultra by a huge margin. As you can see, active standby time, 11 hours and 38 minutes compared to 9 hours and 16. It's already got the battery life down, especially considering the smaller battery size compared to 5,000 milliamp hours on the S22 Ultra. But then going even further in terms of actual gaming performance compared to even newer chips, like the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 and the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, the iPhone 14 Pro Max is getting higher average FPS of 58.5 compared to 56.8. It's already beating them out. And the crazy thing about that is that the iPhone 14 Pro faced an unprecedented setback, leading to the removal of a new graphics processor. Apparently, Apple had a brand new design for their GPU that was meant to go into the A16 Bionic chip, but it got canceled because of power usage, so they basically just reverted back to the same A15 GPU that they had already and kind of adjusted the clock speed. So, if you imagine that the A17 Bionic chip is going to be on 3nm, but it's also going to have a brand new GPU design that's more energy efficient, especially if they have more time to fix those power issues that they had. And of course, the 3nm is going to help. Apple was already ahead of everybody else. Now they're going to be even more ahead in terms of performance and battery life, basically boosting them up massively compared to the competition. And not only that, but we of course are expecting a brand new full redesign for the iPhone 15 lineup, including titanium on the iPhone 15 Pro and Ultra frame, taptic buttons, increased RAM, and of course a brand new design with a periscope camera, as you can see in these renders that I created with Renders by Shailesh. So the idea is Apple's iPhone 15 Pro is going to be better than you think, and the chip itself, the A17, is going to have a huge advantage compared to all of the other smartphones, especially the S23 Ultra, which is coming up soon, still on the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, which the A16 already beats. So that is crazy, and I think Apple's going to have a huge advantage next year compared to everybody else that is suffering from these demand issues. I think Apple's going to do just fine compared to them. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you agree on what I'm saying, you can leave a comment down below, or you can disagree if you want. If you want to see which iPhone I would recommend to buy right now, you can check it out using the YouTube product tagging feature below, and click the circle above for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.